Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We are back again with another culture content. Follow me, Jay Doran underscore the culture man on Instagram for clips on leadership, culture, business, and so much. Today, I'm talking about how to build a good culture with a sales team. How to build a good culture with a sales team. I think we can elucidate on all the theories of psychology and anthropology and business and use case studies and examples ad nauseum. And don't worry, I will. But the first thing that comes to my mind, a good, right? We can talk about what good is. Let's have a culture. Let's do that first before we talk about like make moral claims, good or bad, because there's an ethical conversation there too. But let's say a culture of a sales team. The culture is going to come as a consequence of engagement. Whatever the, regardless of the ethical principles, regardless of, is it a more uh, tribal group oriented persuasion like us, or is it a um, like company orientation, like what can we get, or is it a customer orientation? What can we give to get? Like those are two very different cultures that it could be another conversation. Maybe I can start some of that today. But like we're just talking about have a culture, regardless of the type of culture, right? A us oriented or a them and then us oriented. First, it's about engagement. First, it's about a leader, one who is exempling the behaviors necessary to sell. An individual exempling the behaviors necessary to sell. That's as simple as an individual talking to customers, an individual asking questions and listening. And well, actually, you don't even, that even goes, now we're going to ethical again, because you very easily have a culture where the listening actually isn't happening. It's just the questions necessary for customers to have to develop the beliefs to become absorbed in the problems they may or may not have so that someone can take their capital, right, for a good or service. This is where it becomes gray. It's that gray area, right? What is a good culture with a sales team? And so a culture, regardless of the ethical conversation, is going to be one where, and this is where ethics becomes so important for the long-term relationship success of not only the customer, but the company. A culture needs a leader. It needs someone that's modeling the behaviors that are expected. It needs a leader to example what those that don't have uh, as much authority, influence, or power to example. It needs someone to show up and do the work, be the bridge between the customer's problem and their solution. The customer's perception of their problem, their perception, expectation that the company can solve that problem, and the exchange of capital for goods and services to solve that problem. You know, I think I'm going to lose some people in this, so I'm going to try to oversimplify it or to simplify it even more. If someone is not showing up to actually do the behaviors in a sales team that can do them and do them successfully get rejected, successfully have the conversation, successfully work through the interpersonal conflict or the intrinsic conflict, right? The pain and suffering that comes with having potentially uncomfortable conversations with others. Someone has to do that. The founder of the business does that, like, or there isn't a business. After the founder, someone else has to do that. That may or may not be that person to exemplify that process for others. In the absence of exemplifying that process, there won't be a sales team. So if the topic's going to be how to build a good culture with a sales team, the good piece becomes a conversation around the identity of the organization. That comes to mind Peter Drucker, which is the purpose. He said the purpose of a business is to create a customer. The actual purpose of a business is to create a customer. That becomes an identity conversation. The identity of the organization, the value of the organization is a consequence of the value that the customer gets from having a relationship with the organization. The organization manifests even as a consequence. It's human capital, right? It's people, it's infrastructure, the titles, the investment, the space, the tangible assets, the intangible assets come as a consequence of that relationship between the customer. The purpose of the business is to create a customer, to create the customer and to recreate the customer, to continue to be of value to the customer on the customer's journey towards whatever their end goal is. The company is an intermediary between the customer's pain and problem and their goal, which is the solution of that problem. So how do you build a good sales culture? I'd say first, culture, that's our beliefs. Not just, it's our beliefs above our awareness and below our awareness. Because there's what we like, there's our beliefs and there's our behaviors. And both of those pieces fall into culture, because culture is how individuals act, what rituals a group of people act out to continue to live through the story that's driving them towards their goal, towards the goal above all goals, right? So what's the story? Like, why is the company in existence? Where did it come from? What problem did it solve, right? Why do we exist? Who do we help? What problem do we solve? These are questions that you can ask. You can write them down, right? What's the story that's driving our organization? The purpose of a business is to create a customer. Why do we exist? Who do we help? Who is our customer? What problems do we solve? What problems are we addressing? Because based on the problems, there's going to be a value exchange from the capital to the organization to the fulfillment of the solution of that problem. Why does it matter? Why do the solutions to the problems that we solve matter to our customer? That's going to have an influence on us. See, because I think if you're going to make an argument a good sales culture, it's going to be one rooted around the values that serve the customer. Because a sales culture could very well easily, one that's just company oriented, could easily be a consequence of someone showing up and having conversations with potential customers. Having conversations with potential customers. Like, you have a tale of two cultures. You could have a culture where a leader shows up and has conversations with customers and lies and over promises just to get the transaction, just to get the capital to go from the customer to the company to the salesperson. And if that leader is showing up and having conversations, at an extreme example, and just doing the work, others around them that are seeing what they get, that seeing the resources that they get, will start modeling their behavior. They're going to model their behavior. They're going to desire what they get. They're gonna do it. Monkey see, monkey do. Right? Responsibility is modeled. Accountability is given in speech or taken in action. There could be people in that group that say accountability, right? hey, this is not the right thing to do. You're not honoring the customer. You're over promising, or you're lying, or you're uh, our fulfillment, we're not going to be able to do what you said, or, our service is not going to be as, you know, it's not it's just the transaction. The relation, what happens after the capital is exchanged is less valuable to that extreme example, right? That one culture. But that's still the culture piece, like how the group, what they believe, how they act, the stories they tell themselves and others, the rituals they live by. If someone is showing up and having conversation with customers, it's going to be a culture. It doesn't necessarily, the question is of values, like what type of culture do we actually have? There's like, if I make it, then you have this, let's go in the other extreme. You have a scenario where the salesperson is not having conversations with the customers. Like no leader is calling the customers. No leader is communicating with new customers. It's an overemphasis, like it's a very extreme focus on current customers. There's no outbound. It's just fulfillment. In that extreme, we're fighting laws of nature, because there's going to be a natural decay of happy customers. You can only you can't fulfill forever. Like we're going to eventually run out of food. We're going to run out of livestock. We're going to run out of, it's like we have to hunt. Now, from that, in that culture, if there's no outbound, what happens in that extreme? If there is sales, it might be sales of referrals. So there's no outbound. It's, in that extreme, it's serving the customer, and the customers from that service is referring business to that culture. So now that culture is going to, from the fulfillment, the sale is done through actions. It's done through like the results the customer gets from that transaction. It's not just, the company oriented around itself and what it gets from its sales, outbound, outbound, outbound. That's, remember, these are just extremes that I'm using. It's you sell, you deliver, and you get referred. Those are two different cultures. Now there can also be an example where because the leader, no, but this is what I wanted to say too, is let's say that it's a company where I guess that's not the correct extreme actually I want to use. Because if one extreme is just someone's having conversations with customers, regardless of what they're saying and the value of what they're saying and their values and their core beliefs, it's not customer oriented, it's company oriented, it's salesperson oriented, it's transaction oriented. Eventually they're going to run, well, in theory, they would run out of people. The world we live in now, you don't necessarily have to run out of people. That's where regulations come in, because people can take advantage of people, get high on power. And the other example, that company could go out of business if they don't ask for referrals, they just focus on the customer fulfillment. Eventually, the laws of business will take place where there won't be enough energy, and the business will die, even though it had the best interest of the customers. There's only so much you could do with customers without new customers coming in. They're either coming from outbound or they're coming from referrals. So there has to be some kind of communication with not just actions, but words. And the other one, it's just words and it's not enough actions, because it's high sales and no fulfillment. Those are two extremes, right? High words, no actions. High actions, no words. Those are two extremes. Arguably, maybe that's what I'm arguing here, a good culture, a good sales culture is a synthesis of the two. Right? It's not a lot of words and low actions, or high actions and low words. It's high words and actions, or high actions and words. It's like the chicken or the egg. Which one is first? Forget about which one is first. I mean, in theory, if it's, the word came first, because that's like a Bible thing. Maybe there's something there, is that a metaphor? But it's actions and words. We're fulfilling and we're telling the story. So I guess my first the thing that I want to make the most clear is somebody like the leader needs to talk to customers. Someone has to talk to customers. The person that's talking to customers is a leader, and their values are what's going to be modeled. Their ethics are what's going to be modeled. How they talk to customers, what's going to be modeled. How the company delivers on promises is going to reflect the values of the company. Like, you know, are we customer oriented or are we ourselves? Are we company oriented? Right? Are we salesperson oriented? Are selfish or are we selfishly selfless? I think that's an important piece. We're talking about a good culture because the culture is going to be what our beliefs are, our behaviors, our rituals, our stories. Why does our organization exist? Do the salespeople know what the product does to help the customer, why it exists, how it helps the customer? Do the salespeople know what questions need to be asked to make sure we're solving for the customer? Like we're in the highest ethic for the customer because that's going to create more value for the company long term if the customer is getting a better experience because the cost per customer is going to go down over time as the customer has more and more trust in the organization as a consequence of what the organization has actually done for the customer. Belief and trust get confused very easily where people confuse belief and trust. Trust, like you could believe that someone or something is what it appears to be, but we don't know until we have spend some time with the product, with the service to see if it's as good as we thought it would be. And if it is as good or better if we thought it would be, if we had already believed, then we're going to want to do more. If we believe before and it's not as good as we thought or wanted it to be, then we might, well, we're going to believe less, and then we may have however much we admired or loved what we thought it was, we may turn into, that may invert. And then it's like, we hate, now you get like the person that was the biggest fan is now the biggest enemy, the biggest, anti-review. It's not even a positive review, it's an anti-review. So I would make the argument that the good culture is the long-term focused one, the relational one, the one where the customer is going to get more value than they invested because that creates more economy. That creates more exchange. That creates like an exponential curve of value versus if the customers feel as though their capital is worth more than what they get over a long period of time, it's going to have unhappy customers, unhappy reviews. That the investment of energy into customers is going to end up coming against the organization and make it harder and harder and harder for the salespeople to sell. And then it's just a dumpster fire. But all of this is to say, how to build a culture with sales team, a culture is a leader has to talk to customers or potential customers rather. Like someone has to talk to potential customers. If no one is talking to potential customers, and it could be the best idea ever, but it's not living in the real world. It's not being tested by the world. And it isn't nearly as good of an idea as it appears to be. It's got to be tested by the world, or else no one's going to know it exists. Now, if it's tested by the world through referral, if it's tested by the world through the results, the experience, yeah, that's called like a referral business, right? It's being tested by the world. The actions are speaking louder than the sales and the marketing. Great. There still is going to need to be a leader that's selling those that are referred to the business. Someone is going to have to talk to the potential customer and answer their questions, ask questions to make sure, like this is where it's all develops an ethical framework when you're talking about having a sales team, because a sales team, ethics and values, the value conversation. It's what does the customer value and what value does the product or service bring to the customer? And there's so much subjectivity in that. That's the importance of asking questions and listening and like looking out for the best interest of every customer. And a lot of this is gray. And that's where it becomes, all right, who are our leaders? How are they leading? How often are we getting together? What stories are we telling? Do we know why our company exists? Do we know what we do? Do we know how we do it? Do we have checks and balances for the people that don't care and just want to get paid? It's a long conversation. How to build a good culture with sales team. My hope is that some of this was valuable. Follow me, Jay Doran _ the culture man on Instagram. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.